had so many people ask me for this pattern through the years, and the unfortunate truth of the matter is I think I may have lost a few of the pieces when we were moving. I actually dropped my box full of patterns at some point when we were moving, and there were pattern pieces that went everywhere, and a lot of them I have gone back and reprinted from my own pattern archive, but I had never shared this one because it had a whole backstory to it. And I know the description, the video title, sounds pretty ridiculous. It is not clickbait. I actually have email documentation of the time that I had to contact the United States government to get permission for a doll sewing project. So this is going to be a fun one today, y'all. We're reconstructing a pattern based on something that I made at the very beginning of my doll sewing hobby. My goal is ultimately going to be to share this with you, but I think if I can just get through the part where I reconstruct the pattern, that's going to be a victory for today. Sooner or later, I'll be able to actually share it with you, but the part where I had to get permission to share it is kind of an interesting story. But one of my very first doll sewing projects was I wanted to try to challenge myself to make something a little bit fancier, and I thought it would be really cool to make one of my dolls a uniform. So I actually based it off of my husband's uniform, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned it, but he was in the Marines when we got married. We originally had a plan to have a long engagement. I was supposed to finish college, and he was going to finish his term in the Marines, and then we were going to get married, and that kind of went sideways when they told him he was going to Afghanistan, and he called me at like 3 in the morning, and he's like, "Do you want to get married? Because I'm motor T, so I'm probably gonna die, and I really want you to have the $400,000 killed in action payout whenever I don't come home." So that's the very romantic basis for our marriage and why we got married so young. And I don't regret it. It was really a very fun adventure, you know, and we've been married for 17 years now, and it has just been great, and he is my best friend. But anyway, I'm looking through my pattern box here, and I'm going to try to sort this pattern out and see what is actually missing from it. And if I can figure it out, then I should be able to recreate some of the pieces, and maybe I can finally share this pattern that so many people have asked me for. And to this day, this is one of the doll projects that I am most proud of, because even though it was one of my earliest sewing projects, I think it turned out really, really cool. So I made these dress blues for my April House EID. So this uniform belongs to Rune. Obviously, with him being a fantasy character, that's extremely non-canon, but I always loved the Marine Corps uniform, even, you know, before I was with my husband. That has nothing to do with why we ended up together, but there are a few things that I would really like to revisit about this, and I've been thinking about this pattern lately because I think that I am at a point where I could probably remake it and do better. And I'm going to show you some of the things that I did and also some of the things that didn't work out well, and then we're going to see if I can figure out how to recreate the pattern for this several years later. But before I get to that, because I know you're dying to hear the rest of the story about me having to contact the government regarding this, I don't know if it's common knowledge, but military uniforms are actually trademarked by the government. And that's true of other governments other than just the United States government. And because it is actually a trademarked design, you can't just make something like this. I typically share my patterns with other people. I needed to have permission for that. I couldn't just do it, or I was going to be breaking the law. Ultimately, through my correspondence with the military, they decided that what I was doing would be considered personal use, not for profit. So it would be okay for me to make it and even to share the pattern with a very strict disclaimer that anybody who made these and tried to sell them could be in trouble. So don't do that. Don't get anybody in trouble. My goal is to be able to fix this and finish this and share this pattern. And just don't ruin it for everybody, please. So there's the coat, and then there's the pants underneath. And these were actually made from a base pattern that somebody on Den of Angels had shared a really long time ago, like back when I was new to the doll hobby. I found that it had to be taken in a lot at the back, but having the darts here at the back above the pockets really helped make it fitted around the waist, and it's kind of like a high-waisted dress pants. And these are like real double welted pockets, but there's no pocket on the inside because I was trying to reduce bulkiness. So even though the buttonholes here function and like the flap opens up, there is a real pocket opening here with the double welted opening, but it doesn't go anywhere. And I think if I was going to redo that, I would probably just sew that shut so that it's not just flapping open, because there's actually really no need for those to be functional pockets. And one thing I'm trying to train myself out of is believing that everything needs to be completely functional in doll scale, because it just doesn't. The belt loops do need to be functional belt loops though, so those can stay as they are. Overall, I think the pants, they don't really need a lot of revision. And I wish I could find who it was made the original pattern, but it's been so long that I don't know anymore, and I don't know if it's still there. And with Den of Angels shutting down later this year, it probably won't be there for much longer or accessible for much longer. It's just one of those sad realities of being in a doll hobby for a long time, is a lot of your resources end up getting lost. But I do still have the version of the pattern that I made for this, so I know I can at least provide that. I would like to give credit to the original creator of the pattern, but I'll have to see if I can do some digging to find it. And then there is the jacket, which this is actually, most of it is lined, but the sleeves are not, to reduce bulkiness again. And that's probably something that I would redo, just because I want the doll to be able to bend arms very well. I hand embroidered the rank insignia on the side. This is Corporal, which is what my husband was when he got out after his injury. I think if I was going to redo this, I would probably use my sewing machine now so that those would be a little bit more uniform. And I think these days I could probably sew some better curves around the pockets, but on the whole, I think it's pretty solid. I always really liked how the back came out. It's just such a nicely fitted piece. One thing that I would really like to redo is make one with a better collar. You can see this is kind of a mess, and it's because it was too large to actually be fitted. And that was kind of an awkward workaround that I developed at the time, because, you know, I was new to sewing and I had no idea how to fix it when the material started to shred up around the collar. I hadn't bought enough material to have any do-overs, so I was just like, what can I even do? And what I ended up doing was cutting it down closer around the neck, and then I just made the collar bigger and kind of like tucked it in the back here so that it would at least lay nice around the front part and it wouldn't be super noticeable in the back. But if you're looking closely, it's not very pretty. And I know I can do better than that now because I'm a lot more experienced, but overall, I think it was actually not that bad for how inexperienced I was at the time, and I'm looking forward to revisiting this and seeing if I can do better now, although I don't know when I'll actually get around to it. One thing that I would do for sure is I actually made these buttons by making molds off of his uniform, my husband's uniform, and then I made them with clay, but as a result they're like really chunky. And I think now that I have access to 3D printers, I could probably make buttons that would be a good scale, and also like the collar insignia, the eagle, globe, and anchor. I could make those and make them a lot nicer, and I also use a much nicer gold paint on it because these were gold when I made them, and over the years the clay has discolored. But you know, especially for like doll photos, I think this is actually still really solid. This was like what I had made for the belt that goes over the jacket, and I really always liked this, and I always felt like it was a great example of what I could do if I put my mind to it and really took the time to learn to sew. So it's kind of nice to look at it again, and hopefully I am not missing too many pieces. At least I only need to remake the coat, and I think if I can remake the coat, then I'll be really happy with the updated uniform. So now we get to see what I actually have. And this is like such an interesting mix of different materials that I drew the patterns on. So this is for the hat. I made a cover as well. It's got kind of an awkward seam allowance added on it, but this is the brim for the hat. And I seem to be missing something because the hat should have, like, it goes up kind of like that, and then there should be a band that goes around and connects to the brim. So I'm missing the piece for the band, it looks like, unless it's hidden somewhere in here. Okay, so this is cool. I don't have them out here right now, but I made actual gloves. This is a pattern for the gloves, and I was smart enough to keep it all in one little bag. There's the pattern piece for the thumb and the pattern piece for the glove itself, and wow, those were so hard to make. I was really happy with them in the end, but they had to be completely hand sewn because of how tiny the seam allowances were, like maybe like a 2mm seam allowance. So I can probably scan the glove pattern and make that available, but I'm just warning you now that actually making this is going to be a nightmare. Okay, so this is the, looks like the lower part of the sleeve, and this is the upper part of the sleeve. Here is the top part, and I've got like the dart here, but I don't have any indication of like how this is actually supposed to go together, just that there's darts here with question marks darts. And then that was probably the same deal here. Well, no, it doesn't really look. How in the world did I do that? This is a little bit too large, I think. So that was going to need to have some adjustments made as well. So even if I had not had the issue with that shredding, it still would not have fit very well. I can see I folded it. Okay, so this part here, this is this, and then this side here, because it goes underneath, you can see that this side is actually kind of flared forward, so it's like that. But this is still substantially wider than what it needs to be. I don't know what I did there. None of this was science. I think I actually made this pattern just by cutting out random pieces of material and sticking them together. Okay, this is for the back here. This goes right here where the sleeve is. So this is like the back side right there. And then this is the middle. I can see here where I had marked it because I wanted it to be more tapered at the sides. And I never actually updated the pattern to be tapered like that. Okay, this looks like it is this pocket down here. Okay, so this was the template for this pocket here because it's like folded, like an accordion fold or a pleat right there. And so this has that actually sketched out on the front, I guess, to show me how it's supposed to work. Is that for this? Wow, that is so unnecessarily huge. And then this, it's not the collar. This is way too big to be the, oh, I bet it's for the hat. It's probably that round piece that I was missing for the hat. This is a little strap thing right there. There's a word for it, I just can't remember it off the top of my head. So really all I'm missing is the collar, and that makes sense with how I had to kind of wing it to make the collar work. So I'm thinking that if I could pull out the Kurta pattern that I did that has a standing collar, I can probably copy the collar off of that and then update the front and back pieces of the pattern to make sure that it fits that collar correctly. And that should give me a workable pattern. I found the pattern for Rune's Masquerade coat, and this has the kind of collar that this needs to have, so I should be able to kind of scrap something together from this. And see, I thought recreating this pattern was going to be an easy project, because I could just sit down, trace existing pieces, and then reconstruct a few for the body of the pattern. And ultimately it's taken me like several weeks to get this done. Unfortunately, part of that is because I got sick right in the middle of it, and well, unfortunately there's not really a lot that can be done for that. All I will say is that ticks are very, very bad this year, and please, you know, if you're in the US, be very careful because they give you very icky things if you get bitten, and the medication that I am on now is making me very, very sick. So now I'm working on the front pattern piece, and what I need to do here is figure out how wide this dart needs to be, and also if I need to bring in the side a little bit here. So what I can do here is I can measure the front here, assuming a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then see how far it is to the edge of the dart. And then up at the top, so 2 1/4 to the dart is like right here, and then 2 1/8 to the dart is right here. So connecting those gives me the first piece of the dart, and then I'm going to repeat the same thing for this side. Adding a 1/4 inch should put us there. It does not, so that indicates that I did actually bring that in a little bit. So this is what the dart should look like. And this indicates here that I did bring this part in a little bit, like that. So next I just have to figure out the armhole and the neckline. This part here is going to be interesting because what I need to do is bring this part of the collar up to accommodate the properly fitting collar. But what I have here is a pattern piece from a different outfit that I made for my EID, so I know this fits with the collar the way that I want, and then if I can make this fit with this, I can use the same collar piece to get that fit that I want. This one actually has this extension past the collar here, and it overlaps in the front here. And then I probably need to put like a little notch right there on the pattern to show where the collar needs to align. Because if I don't have this, then how are people going to know to leave this part alone? But here is a gap that I need to close somehow. And I also still need to include the darts that go here, so this is going to take a little bit of guesswork and redrawing, but I think I should be able to cut the pattern and like open up these slashes here to be able to fold this corner in to meet this one. That'll tell me how wide these darts need to be to make the collar fit properly. The general idea I had was that if I open this up, I'll be able to see where these darts go. And that should also help me eliminate this extra little bit here. I don't want the sleeve to move at all. So this extra needs to fold in here. It's actually a little too much. So this will let me recreate the darts that go here and preserves the width of the shoulder without affecting the armhole. So ultimately this is going to change how it fits in the front, but hopefully it will also fit better. I'll probably have to do some adjustment for like the pocket placement and such, because this shows it obviously a lot higher up than this. And so that'll probably need some minor adjustment, but all I can really do at the moment is rough together this draft and then test it out later and see how that works. And as far as I can tell, I think that's everything that I need to try to reconstruct the coat. And hopefully that's all that's going to need to be done. Is this actually going to work? I don't know, but this is a pretty big difference, and it's definitely going to need testing. I don't have time for that right now, but hopefully I'll be able to tackle it soon. I have a lot of other sewing projects and doll customization projects in general, but since I'm not feeling the best, I'm just kind of trying to work within my limits. So stay tuned, I guess, because over the summer we're going to see if I can remake this, but do it better. That's all for today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.